We're going to start our March garden tour over here in the back garden fence area. And this first topia here got some real height. Like from here, that's like a full-on foot that it grew, which is super exciting. I did add some new hostas here on either side of it since our last garden tour. Here we have some coreopsis. And then I decided to try to put the bulbs of the hyacinths that I had forced inside here into the landscape. I'll see if they actually are able to leaf out next year and provide blooms. If not, that's totally okay, but I just want to give it a try. Here is some celosia that I winter sowed. I did already go ahead and pinch them back to sort of help it get more bushy. So a few there, they're going to get some orange spikes. And then over here we have some Aztec grasses around this. It's supposed to be a fruit tree. I think they're called Chinese plums that we transplanted. Not really showing the best signs of life, but the other day I went ahead and did like a scratch test. Let's see if I can do one again. And so there is still some green there. That's really good. That means it's still viable. Currently it must still be in its dormant stage, so that's completely understood. Our hopes is to get this to rebloom, provide more fruit, and it's just going to be a nice accent here in the back. Over. The bougainvillea is doing well. It's actually starting to carry itself up on the fence. So here we have a Blew My Mind Evolvulus doing well. Here is I forgot the name for it, but the container said Purple Mona, and then the hawthorns in the back are a different texture, but they definitely are underperforming on height-wise, so I might have placed it in the wrong spot there. So I'll figure out somewhere else for them to shine. Here is some of the other hostas that we had here as of last year. So these died back completely to the ground. I can actually see bundles that I might could divide them as well, but I like the bushier look because I wanted to take up that whole space there, so there'll be no bare soil. Here we have some of those Aztec grasses, always doing good. Our topiary, the top sphere is doing really well because it does get more sun. The bottom sphere is a little bit smaller, and I think it's because of that. I can also fertilize it with like an evergreen or a tree fertilizer. And this hosta is one of the bare root varieties that we planted up. I just had an extra one, so I'm going to give this spot a try. Our painted lady hibiscus is budding up. I already did see a few blooms here in February and March, so that's exciting that it's still alive, so I kept it for a whole season now. My camellias are doing really well. They're growing. I am starting to see new growth, this lighter green leaves. So it does have new growth on both of them, which is exciting. This is the purple, I think it was lavender, Philippine lavender. Still gorgeous, gorgeous foliage. No blooms as of yet. I am starting to see a bud though. So they'll look like that and then open up. All along this plant, you'll see tons and tons of these purple blooms here. Underneath that, I had some lilies in the ground already before planting this one, so they're actually starting to show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then these two I pulled from the snapdragon bed. I guess I had left 2 lily bulbs in there before just overhauling it to a snapdragon bed. And they were still growing, thriving, lots of leaves, so I just figured just to find a spot here in the back garden for them. This yellow hibiscus is doing well. It does have like 2 or 3 blooms a day. They fall off and new blooms come after that. We have our daylilies. Yesterday I was looking at some photos of last year, and I did notice that these were pretty big and bushy. Because while looking at them now, when they were dyed back in November or in December, January time, they seem so tiny. So I figured, wow, these grew so much. But compared to last year's, they're pretty much on par. They do get this many leaf blades. We have our hydrangeas behind it. This one was like my, I don't know, like a gardener goal. If I can get this to rebloom, I guess first would be if I can keep them alive. And so far, looking well. The next is if I can get these to rebloom. That's going to be like a personal achievement for me. Here in Florida, at least. it's not as common. So it has some leaves. This one seems like more leaf growth showing, and this one, though, I could see a lot of the buds, the end parts, are swelling. So that does show good growth. I do fertilize once a month with the granular fertilizer and just give it a good watering in. It's gonna rain for 3 days here coming up soon. So I'm gonna put granular fertilizer across everything so that it can get a good watering in. But we had an empty spot right there where that one is, and in between here that I wanted to place something of a different texture, because right now it's really just green, more green. So I wanted some different colors here. And let me see what these are called. I just loved the foliage on them. Okay, so it is called a Hawaiian snowbush, snow mountain. Perfect here. It's going to get that part sun. It doesn't get too much cold here, but when it does, I can sort of help try to protect it. And it doesn't have blooms from what I can tell, but they are tiny, sort of looks like a flower coming off of. I see some caterpillars. I have to Google these, see what kind of caterpillars they are. If they're the good ones or the bad ones. That's so exciting. I have to Google that. So we have here a little bit closer look at the leaf structure, the leaf texture. And these are the little flower things that I see on it. Oh, did it fall off? Okay, so it's underneath it. And they do look like flowers. Isn't that the cutest? So from it being in the actual garden bed and the distance from the walking path, we're not going to be able to see this, but you know, it'll be something that I know about the plant. That is so sweet. And I like the pink and green leaves like this. With the pink vines. Definitely a different contrast for this area. See if I can get a closer look at these caterpillars. Maybe one of you can help identify this. Okay, and now walking over to where our seedlings are. We passed by this. I want to figure out how to make this sort of walking path more concrete, not just, you know, like 6 or 7 stones just on the ground, but that's still to come, how to figure out to make this sort of a formal entrance. We have our sweet alyssum here. These definitely took over, did really well, kept them watered, and it does get the amount of sun that it needs here. But all of the daffodils and all of the tulips that we had placed here, I got nothing. A lot of the tulips came up, but the leaves started to turn like a pinkish, and it could be to water, so that was my main concern, me not knowing how much to water it. So that was a bust. I want to say it was like 30 tulips and like probably the same 30 daffodils were set to come up in here, and it just did not work out. But the sweet alyssum here is doing just fine. It adds light airiness to this area. Then we have our chast tree. I did have to rotate it because I had this overarching part where we have these 3 branches here on this side, and it was just too close to this Jane magnolia, and you couldn't really appreciate both textures of the leaves. It just seemed like one big jumbled mess. So I went ahead and, before it sort of got more established, dug it up, turned it around, and added more soil, like ground soil, to it. And it looks like it's bouncing back. These had sort of drooped off. Now that we can see some, if we can focus in on it. Now that we can see some buds growing on this. That day that I had not really transplanted it, but rotated it, it was wilting. These were like down. So that was my concern, but you know, keeping it watered and knowing that we had a few cool days coming up here is why I chose to do it this weekend versus, you know, like a 90-degree entire week. So these are budding up really well. It's exciting to see. Then we have our Jane magnolia. This one already bloomed. I don't see any new buds, but this is what I was doing. Just snipping off this top portion. Whether that's good or bad, I mean, I don't know. This is the the first time I'm dealing with this plant, so I'll be careful with not, breaking more branches. But for those flower buds, I don't think the plant needs them anymore. The last tree we have here was a crepe myrtle. That's what it was. So much growth on this one compared to last month. So much growth. The leaves are brighter green. No buds yet. This is more like a midsummer bloomer. We have our smaller terracotta of the same sweet alyssum. Oh, okay, here you can see those tulips spikes where they were turning pink. So I don't know what I did or didn't do, but I got 0 tulips and 0 daffodils. This one also had daffodils. So you can see it kind of tried to bloom, but all of the leaves turned this pink color. And definitely not worth a bloom to keep, fertilizing and keep providing nutrients to. So I'll have to prick those. And now we enter, still haven't thought of a name, but this is going to be sort of the garden oasis, garden room, something. The roses did get delivered, so I still need to plot them here and here. Here's the first bed. Our Coreopsis doing well, blades are getting bushier, the poppies, the love and a mist, more poppies, and these I am starting to see bud. These are the double click cosmos. So tons of buds, and I did pinch these off because I heard that they are prolific. So instead of planting multiple, I just figured I'll go ahead and try to pinch them, so try to get more branching that way. There's about 10 there. Some more poppies, and then I did sow some Rudbeckia seeds, but the soil is so bare here, it's not covered up by anything else that I have to keep it watered, so I'm not sure how many of those will come up. Here's something I just planted in the meantime, but since the snapdragon bed is now clear, it's going to go in this space, and this honestly might be hidden, but it was something nice for the moment. And then I thought, well, this salvia gets pretty tall. These purple ones are like an annual, and this iris is also an evergreen sort of plant, and the blades are pretty tall, and the bloom spikes are also tall, so I would see it past the planter bed. So not a total bust is what I'm telling myself. And here the calendula are popping off. Let's see. I do have to cut them because I think since they are cut and come again, the more you cut them, it just helps the plant produce more flowers. So there's 1, 2, about 3 ready, and a lot of them are still in the close to opening stage. I'll have to Google these and see if it's best to pluck them maybe at this stage versus super tight, super closed, or fully open, seeing what the best method is for longer vase life. Our latest is our Wisteria, and let's get close up on these buds. So there's about 3 of them looking like that, like a bunch of, looks like a, like a purple raspberry. 1, 2, 3, and this one I saw yesterday was actually starting to fully develop and actually pop out of that. So essentially this is the look that we're going for. Let me flip it around. It's going to be these long sort of bloom, not like a stalk, but you've seen wisteria. So it's amethyst wisteria. Looks like the feet is 15 inches high, 10 inches wide. Light is full scent to part shade requirement. It's a summertime bloomer. And what I did like about this is that it's drought tolerant. Being here next to the house foundation, that's always a concern, but it being a vine, I don't think it's going to be too harsh as if it was a full-on tree. It is zones 5 to 9. It is deciduous, so that's good to know, to keep in mind. When I have it in this spot, it will look like a bare, just sort of trunk for some months, for some time. Next we have is our Meyer lemon. The bushel that I'm holding out for to bloom, or to, pick one day, is this one. So there's 4 of them. There's one large one here and one coming up above it. I did see a flush of flowers, and it looks like some of them might have been pollinated because the little green part there on the back is still holding on. So I want to say that means they're starting to go to fruit. So let's see. I do try to water it every other day. We are almost approaching, well, we basically are here in April, so I need to refertilize it. It's every 3 months, so I did it in January, and April's my next time. Now these bare root hostas we planted up like about 2 weeks ago, not even too long. So they were ready to leaf out as soon as they arrived. So I want to say in our video we did the small mouse, small leaf Catherine, small mouse, small leaf Catherine, and then I did have about 2 or 3 extra. I had like 3 or 4 extra. So I did another small leaf mouse at the end and a Catherine small leaf in the beginning. So now instead of the 4 we planted, we'll have 6 here. And I wanted to give them ample room to sort of shine on their own. I'll see if I want to put mulch around it or a smaller plant. Here we had, I cannot find the name, but I have these sort of a 2 mound in our front garden, and I went ahead and tried to propagate them here. They did well with just potting mix, so I'll see if they do well in the sand sort of soil texture we have here. So those hopefully will stay alive. In our next video, we'll see how much growth they put on. Here we have our Hellebores. This middle one is doing really well. The leaves are propped up. This one probably needs water. It's pretty sad. And this one as well is the one, well, this one might be different because this one Aspen likes to lay on, but this middle one is giving me hope that if I treat it right and can take care of it, maintain the water, that they'll be able to actually survive here in Florida. Now let's take a look at the back garden. We have this tree form here. I always forget the name of it, but it's doing really well. It's bushing up. You can tell new growth is happening by the edges of the leaves being like a lighter chartreuse color versus that darker green. So doing really well. So panning away from there, here we see some calendula that I transplanted from that flower bed. We have some buds that are tighter, still yet to open, some that are close to opening, so definitely want to research that when to pluck them. But for this area, I'll try to do my best to keep it here so we can enjoy the flowers in the garden. And over here we have our first terracotta bowl. I did see a hummingbird here yesterday, which is exciting. These bloom spikes are starting to open up. So we have a blue salvia, an English daisy mix. This one did get a caterpillar in it as well, but I could not find the one in here. And then I left apparently a sweet potato vine here. I pulled out the larger sweet potatoes when they started to root, but apparently I left one, and I saw one on this side as well. More down 2, and those are vigorous growers. So we'll see when these calendula die out, that sweet potato vine will take over the space, hopefully, because that's what it did last year. Here's the same. I replanted some. Actually, no, I just replanted one of this one. I'm not sure what it is, and then a calendula over there, and calendula here. And these are the salvia that were here last year. They were able to stay alive and now re-fleshing out that new foliage. These, I think they're called buttercup something. I propagated these from my mom's garden. She has a big mound of it in her front yard. So these were small little, if you do have a buttercup plant, you'll see that they have tons and tons of little seedlings that they shoot up. So I just picked about 20 of them. I'm gonna see if they can start to bloom up here. So I already pinched these off as well because they were getting pretty tall. Here in the other side of the back wall garden is these hawthorns. There's 3 of them, and we actually started to see these bloom here in March. So we can see what the buds look like first, just sort of green spikes, and then the blooms are a nice dainty white with the pink in the middle. I don't think these provide fruits or anything. Maybe a berry, but we'll see. I'm not going to trim these because I want them to get higher and sort of be a small hedge here. Then we have our second terracotta bowl. Also, well, the salvia is doing a lot better, but also salvia and an English daisy mix. And here we have the celosia that self-seeded itself from last year. I try to keep it moist, but the growth is definitely at a slower rate. And here's our second chaste tree, doing really good. Let's see if I see any buds on this one. This one does get less sun, so it could be a small rate, or a slower rate than the one where it gets full sun. So no buds yet. And now for our hanging baskets. I'm not sure where these were in February, but here in March I pulled these sweet potato vines and just put them all here. I think I had been keeping the sweet potato vines aside to place back into the landscape, but they're all from the same plant. So one looks like this, the other two are going to do the exact same thing. So probably not the smartest to do this here because it's sort of taking over that basket. But we'll see. I might just pull one out and put another flowering plant there. Here we have some creeping Jenny. I did go to water it earlier this week and a small bird flew out. So that's going to be something to be cautious of when I keep watering these. To make sure that bird flies away from me. And now the last plant that I like to highlight is this Chinese croton. It's doing so gorgeous. Over the weekend we went to not this weekend, sometime in March, I forget the dates. We went to Lou Gardens to their annual plant sale looking for this vendor that gave us this one, and he did not have any, sadly. So I'm going to try to propagate this one and see if it will actually take root, because we want to have a second one on this side of this awning, and I think that'll be a really nice like flanking hanging plant there. Also, I did get this aloe 2 years ago now when we first moved in from my fiance's mom, and it is starting to bloom. The spike is coming up, so that's super exciting. And since you're here and you stayed to the end of the video, thank you so much. We'll do a quick run of our front garden. So this is our Chinese lantern tree from last year, so it's done really well. A lot of new branching. We have some sweet alyssum and I forgot what these tinier ones are, but those have yet to do anything really. It's just been more of a leaf structure, but it's supposed to have a bloom spike on it as well. We'll see if that does come to fruition. We have our white vinca here, doing really well, again from last year. It loves the amount of sun it gets here. An iris behind, tons of dusty miller. This is that mystery plant I was talking about. It mounds up really well here. It just trails and becomes a full-on ground cover. We have a pink salvia in the back. These are the lingustrum. We have some lambs here doing really well. Since we're in the dry season, I think that's what's helping it thrive, the full-on heat. So some marigolds that self-seeded from last year, which I do not mind. A larger pink salvia. We caught a hummingbird, no way. And that's the blue salvia from the back where we had seen the hummingbird. So now I know it does enjoy those. We have a Texas sage tucked in between the two salvias. And in the front we have these three Japanese blueberries, and these should be repeat blooming roses. And I went ahead and trimmed the first flush of blooms, so now we can see a bud coming up here. And I want to say here, so sort of everywhere, I cut back the branch to the first set of 5 leaves, like you can see there, and where I made the snip. So from where the old bloom was, I cut it back to the first set of 5. So that should help these rebloom. They're going to look like this. Looks like it's getting some fresh buds already. And then we have some small jasmine vines, I want to say these are, and some more alliums that I had left over that instead of planting them in the back, I wanted to put them up here. With some bees pollinating them. And that's our video for today. Thank you all for watching. We will see you in the next video. I hope you have a great day, and thank you for visiting my first garden.